watching Al Jazeera. A reminder of our top story this hour. The Supreme Leader of Iran, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, says those who killed Qassem Soleimani should await, quote, tough revenge. Iranians are mourning the death of Soleimani at Friday prayers in Tehran. After authorizing the strike, President Donald Trump tweeted a picture of the American flag, but he's made no further comments yet. Qassem Soleimani's death has exacerbated already tense relations between Iran and the United States. Well, we're going to bring in our guest, who is with me here in the studio, Marwan Bashara, who is our senior political analyst, and he joins us here in the studio now. Marwan, I was very struck earlier listening to Dorsa Jabari. We were looking at those pictures of Friday prayers earlier, and she talked of what she described as a great sense of betrayal in Tehran. Now, if you were potentially looking at this from the US perspective, you're thinking betrayal? Why? What does that mean? I just wonder if you can unpick that for us.
Well, I mean, certainly the United States and Iran did go through a long process of negotiations over a nuclear agreement by which the United States was going to basically lift sanctions and allow Iran to develop peacefully, of course, free of nuclear programs and weapons and so on and so forth. The advent of the Trump administration changed all of that, and suddenly sanctions were imposed, primary sanctions, secondary sanctions, attempt to cripple the Iranian regime until it comes back humiliated to the negotiations table in order to renegotiate the deal. And clearly, President Trump has been quite aggressive in his approach to Iran. And at this point in time, the only way I can see and I interpret the killing of Qassem Soleimani is a declaration of war. Because this was not done covertly. This was not done in secret. And certainly this was not done and no responsibility recognized. Trump has boasted, basically, of killing the Iranian commander. And that, for me, again, is very similar to some sort of a middle-aged challenge to a duel. So basically what we have now, and I ask all our viewers to forget about everything else, all the noise, and all the other ayatollahs and all the advisors and even the president, like President Rouhani and Foreign Minister Zarif, all of that now is noise. What we have is President Trump challenging Ali Khamenei to a duel. Let's fight it out, basically.
And does that have to end in all-out escalation? Because both sides potentially have a lot to lose.
Absolutely. So the question is, and here I have a number of, I would say, out-of-the-box ideas about what the Trump administration might be thinking, just to follow their or President Trump's logic over the last 3 years. So I'm going to ask a provocative question.
I'm ready.
Is President Trump planning to withdraw America from Iraq like he did from Syria? Like he is trying to do in Afghanistan? Is President Trump in the mindset that, look, we don't need all this headache in the various countries and the hotspots of the Middle East. We need to bring our troops home, but our Navy, our Marines, and our Air Force will stay there. And if anyone moves in any which way against our embassies or against our interests, we will attack them. But we don't have to be held hostage, our people, our experts, our teachers, and so on and so forth, in the various hotspots of the Middle East.
So this could be a sophisticated strategy from the US administration with pre-planning, as opposed to, the initial statements that we had from the US were that this was, a provocative action, a reflex, something that looked like it might have been done on the hoof. And also, I remember just earlier this week, I think it was New Year's Eve, we heard Trump say at an event, Melania was standing next to him, and he said, we don't want escalation. Yeah. And actually, Iran shouldn't want escalation either. And yet here we are.
So please, don't use big words like sophistication, because the only thing to be expected from this administration has been not to expect much from this administration, because you never know what happens next. But clearly, this kind of an action, after saying we don't want war from Iran, to basically declare war against Iran by attacking one of its heroes and its commanders, the closest man probably to Ayatollah Khamenei, the sword of Ayatollah Khamenei over the last 2 decades, and then to say, I don't want warfare with Iran, I want trouble with Iran, is, of course, runs shallow in so many ways. But once again, the scenarios could differ because history of the last 40 years teaches us that Iran is not interested in fighting the United States on its own field, in its own landscape of power, which is direct military confrontation, because everyone knows, and no Iranian should have a second thought, that Iran will be crushed if it's going to fight the United States face-to-face, military to military. And that's why Iran, for the last 40 years, has avoided. It's called Al-Quds Force. It's supposed to liberate Al-Quds, meaning Jerusalem. And yet there has been no confrontation between Iran and Israel for the last 40 years. No direct confrontation between Iran and Israel, while we have this commander, former commander, late commander, who was tasked by Al-Quds Force. So Iran is not about to do what it has avoided doing for the last 40 years, which is military confrontations with military powers that are superior to it militarily. Hence, that takes us to other forms of confrontation. Could it be covert operation? Could it be systematic, long process of assassinations against America and its allies and so on and so forth? Could it be proxy, meaning using its assets in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and elsewhere? Or could it be some form of an escalation in the Gulf region, for example, that will allow, once again, to, of course, the hiking of the oil prices, of the peace and security, the international peace and security to be put at risk? There are a number of scenarios out there.
Marwan, we'll leave it there for just now. Thank you.